Right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, B'chai Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. All right. Um, Pretty much wanted to do a video going into history and prophecy. All right, dealing with the Roman Empire. All right, but the ending of the Hasmonean, all right, or the Hasmonean dynasty. All right. And how basically Judea, as we read in Revelation 12, all right, talks about the dragon casting down, with its tail, drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and cast them to the ground. So, all right, we're going to go into how that happened. All right, how Judea became a province of Rome, okay, and the setting of the New Testament. All right, because, when we read in the book of Matthew, Luke, John, all the different books, all right, that took place during the era or the time of the New Testament. All right, this is you know, based, all right, or the setting is Israel being a province under Rome. All right, and what that means is there were certain things we could and we could not do. And when you understand the background of that, you'll see why, for example, the Pharisees and the Sadducees acted the way they did. Why they had to take Yahushua to Pontius Pilate, all these different little things here and there. Okay. And Lord's will, which I don't think I'll get into today. All right, but Lord's will, I might come back and uh do finish it off, as to what ultimately how Jerusalem was sieged in 70 AD or 66 to about 73 AD or so. All right, the Roman Jewish wars and how they put an end, all right, to Jerusalem. Okay. So we're gonna start off with the Hasmonean dynasty. All right, which if you've read the book of Maccabees, all right, you should be familiar with it. All right, this was basically started by you know the brothers, all right, Judas Maccabees and the rest of his brothers. All right. And as we're gonna read through, I believe it was Simon, all right, that really set it into motion. Okay. All right, so we have here the Hasmonean dynasty. Okay, and it says here the Hasmonean dynasty was a ruling dynasty of Judea and surrounding regions during classical antiquity. So basically, after the Babylonian Empire, all right, taking it back a bit, after the Babylonian Empire, we were allowed to return. During the reign of the Persians, we were allowed to return back, all right, to Jerusalem. Which some Israelites stayed, all right, in Babylon. Some stayed in Media and Persia. Some went back to Jerusalem, all right, and rebuilt the temple, all right, and rebuilt the walls. Okay, and then fast forward to the time of Alexander, all right, when the Greeks came into rulership, he comes and he goes and conquers the known world, all right, and then we started catching that hell from the the Ptolemaic and Seleucid kings, all right. So the Hasmonean dynasty basically came from that Maccabean revolt that we read about in the book of Maccabees, which started with Mattathias, all right, the father, all right, of the brothers, you know. So that's what we're reading about right now. That's what the Hasmonean dynasty is. Okay. So it says during classical antiquity from 140 BCE to 37 BCE, between 140 and or circa 116 BCE, it says the dynasty ruled Judea semi-autonomously from the Seleucid Empire. All right, from roughly 110 BCE, with the empire disintegrating. All right, now semi-autonomously, if they ruled, like if they were fully autonomous, they would basically be self-governing. They do whatever they want to do, not subject to anybody. All right. However, through agreements, and certain treaties that they made with the Seleucid Empire, they were able to rule semi-autonomously. So they had, wiggle room, all right, to rule as they pleased, but it wasn't to where they could surpass the authority of the Seleucids at the time. All right. So it says, and that was through the diplomacy, really. The diplomatic tactics used by Jonathan and Simon. All right, with the Greek kings. All right, so it says here, Judea gained full independence and expanded into the neighboring regions of Samaria, Galilee, Iturea, Perea, and Idumea. All right, so when you look at this map right here, it basically shows you. All right, I'll zoom in a bit. All right, it shows you how broad or how far we were able to conquer. Okay, all right, and this is how far, how much control we had over this land or this area. All right, prior to the ending of the Hasmonean dynasty. All right, when Rome came and basically said, "All right, we're gonna, take you guys down, subject you," and then they ended up splitting up, the territory. Okay, eventually among the Herods, and they ruled, over different parts. All right, as we became a province. Okay, but as we're reading here, so as we expanded, we took over these different lands, Idumea as well. All right, it says the Hasmonean rulers took the Greek title of Basileus, which means king or emperor, and some modern scholars refer to this period as an independent kingdom of Israel. The kingdom was ultimately conquered by the Roman Republic, and the dynasty was displaced by Herod the Great in 37 BCE. And we're also going to go into how these Herods were able to slither their way in there, all right, into that power seat. Okay. It says because ultimately they try to marry into the Hasmonean dynasty, and that's why Herod tried to pass himself off as a Jew. Okay. Now it says here the dynasty was established under the leadership of Simon Thasai, all right, 2 decades after his brother Judas Maccabeus, all right, defeated the Seleucid army during the Maccabean revolt. According to First Maccabees, Second Maccabees, and the first book of the Jewish War by Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, all right, which when you read the Josephus, is different books. All right, you could get the complete edition. It has all of them together. All right, which he was mainly like he went into the history part of it. So he wasn't a prophet. So there are certain things that, of course, there's certain bones here and there, but for the most part, he does go into, he does cover the history and gives us some more background information that we could use. All right. Um, it says Antiochus the Fourth moved, and he was, a credible source because he was actually during the siege of Jerusalem. All right, he actually fought. He fought in the siege of Jerusalem. All right, against Vespasian and Titus. And eventually, since they started the siege, they came down from up north. All right, and started, Galilee, Gamala, Gadara, all the way down. All right, that's how they started the siege. So being that Josephus was fighting, defending the areas up north, he eventually got taken captive. All right, he got taken captive. All right, but eventually they let him free. All right, gave him some land, I believe, in Rome. So he was able to be decent and well off, and that's why he was able to record a lot of the history of it because he was actually, in there. All right, so it says Antiochus the Fourth, all right, Epiphanes, moved to assert strict control over the Seleucid satrapy of Coel Syria. Coel Syria means all Syria. All right, Coel goes back to the Hebrew kal, which is all. We'll say like kal halal. All right, that means all praises. All right, so kal Syria or all Syria. It says and Phoenicia, after his successful invasion of Ptolemaic Egypt, was turned back, all right, by the intervention of the Roman Republic. And when you read in Daniel the 11th chapter, as well as in the book of Maccabees, it tells you how Antiochus was pissed off because as he went basically to take over, and invade Egypt, Rome intervened. All right, they sent one of their generals. All right, if I'm not mistaken, I believe his name was Gaius Leanus Populus. All right, we could just look that up. Gaius It'll pop up anyway. Let's see, Pupillus. There we go. Gaius Popilius Lianus or Lanus, whatever his name is. All right, but he was the one, all right, who was sent, okay, to stop Antiochus. All right, and he basically drew a sand, drew a line, a circle in the sand around Antiochus and told him, look, before I even shake your hand, all right, you need to give me an answer. Are you going to back off, or are you going to wage war on Egypt, which means waging war on Rome? And Antiochus, of course, he was like, you know what, whatever. He gets upset. He doesn't wage war on Egypt. And so, as we're reading here, it says he was turned back by the intervention of the Roman Republic. And that basically infuriated him. He was pissed. So what did he do? He came on his way back. He sacked Jerusalem and its temple, suppressing Jewish and Samaritan religious and cultural observances, and imposed Hellenistic practices. The ensuing revolt by the Jews in 167 BC began a period of Jewish independence, potentiated by the steady collapse of the Seleucid Empire under attacks from the rising powers of the Roman Republic and the Parthian Empire. Because at this time, Rome is also growing, because Rome was to basically assimilate and take over the Greek Empire and the territories that the Greeks had control over. So Rome is growing and is growing and is growing. All right. And this is basically that transition as spoken of in Daniel 4:17, that the Most High setteth up kingdoms and he taketh down, kingdoms, roughly paraphrasing. All right. So Rome is growing and the Seleucid Empire is waning. All right. And eventually Rome takes over. And guess what? We still subject, right? So it says, however, the same power vacuum that established the Jewish state to be recognized by the Roman Senate, all right, 139 BCE, was later exploited by the Romans themselves. It says in 63 BC, which we're gonna go into, that was when the kingdom was invaded, all right, by the Roman Republic, broken up and set up as a Roman client state. Because Rome, I believe, was founded around the 700s, 700 BC over there, all right, by Romulus and Remus. And, as the story goes, they were suckled by a she-wolf, all right. And I believe Romulus ended up killing Remus, all right. And that's how Rome, you get the name Rome. It came from Romulus's name, all right, or was named after him. And they started off as a kingdom, okay, small city, grew into a kingdom, all right, and then they didn't, due to certain events, they did away with their kings and they set up a republic, all right, where they had the Senate and so on and so forth. You had the plebeians and the patricians, all right, and all of that. They set up a Senate and they had a republic, and eventually that all got done away with when Julius Caesar decided, he was like, yo, I'm about to basically run this joint, and then so starting, Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, so on and so forth, you now have emperors, okay, hence it became, basically like an empire, all right. So at this time, as it says here, it was invaded by the Roman Republic, which the one who led that was Pompey, okay. It says broken up and set up as a Roman client state. Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, Simon's great-grandsons, became pawns in a proxy war between Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. The deaths of Pompey in 48 BCE and Caesar in 44 BCE and the related Roman civil wars temporarily relaxed Rome's grip on the Hasmonean kingdom, because after that death of Julius Caesar, there was a civil war. All right, there was a lot of tension and back and forths going on, and eventually you would have that tension between Mark Antony and Octavian, all right, or Augustus Caesar. So Rome was basically not in the best position, hence their grip was a little loosed. They couldn't really focus on the East. They had to focus on what's going on at quote unquote home. It says, allowing a brief reassertion of autonomy backed by the Parthian Empire. This short independence was rapidly crushed by the Romans under Mark Antony and Octavian. The dynasty had survived for 103 years before yielding to the Herodian dynasty in 37 BCE. And the Herodians, they basically crept their way in there. All right, and as we're gonna read into it, they basically crept their way in there with Antipas or Antipater, the Idumean. Okay. Um, but anyway, it says the installation. See the installation of Herod the Great and Idumean. So it tells you, and Idumean, all right, or Edom. We know who they are, right? Who is Edom? Well, let's get what the scriptures say verbatim. Okay, I believe it's Genesis 36 and 6. Okay, not 36 6. Genesis, there we go. Genesis 36 and 1. It says, now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. All right, so Esau is Edom. Okay, and we know who the Edomites are today, or at least we should know who they are today. All right, so the Idumean is, all right, just a Greek way of saying Edom. All right. It says, as king in 37 BCE, made Judea a Roman client state and marked the end of the Hasmonean dynasty. Even then, Herod tried to bolster the legitimacy of his reign. Now, pay attention to this. By marrying a Hasmonean princess, Miriamne, and planning to drown the last male Hasmonean heir at his Jericho palace. In 6 CE, Rome joined Judea proper, Samaria, and Idumea into the Roman province of Judea. All right, so that's why you have, Galilee, Samaria, all that was joined together under Rome. Okay, it says in 44 CE, Rome installed the ruler or the rule of a procurator side by side with the rule of the Herodian kings, specifically Agrippa I and Agrippa II. So what they did was, after they besieged and came up in there and conquered us, they told us that we couldn't have any more kings. We couldn't have, they reduced our position. All right, as I'm going to go into here, this is the siege of Jerusalem. This is when Pompey came there. All right. And at the time, the Hasmonean dynasty was, still there. But after he came there and sieged it, because we were having that tension, it was a civil war between the two brothers. All right, as we're going to read. All right, so it says the siege of Jerusalem, 63 BC. Now this is middle, right? This is prior to the New Testament, or the books that we read of in the New Testament. So after the book of Malachi, all right, and then you start at the book of Matthew, that time span in between, all right, is what we're going into the how the Greeks asserted their rule over us, all right, which the book of Maccabees goes into that, all right, and how eventually they were taken down, and how the Romans came up and asserted their rule into over us. So when you come into the you start reading the book of Matthew, Luke, John, this setting is already after Rome is in power and they're over us. We're subject onto them. Okay, that's why we had to pay taxes and pay in tribute, and so on and so forth. All right, that's why they had you as you read, like Caesarea, named after Caesar. Okay, you have Philippi, named after Philip. So it's different lands, different areas that different events that you read of in the New Testament, that there's a background for that. All right. And it helps you if you understand what's going on. All right. So when you're reading in the New Testament or you're reading certain scriptures, you have a little bit of understanding, all right, to make it clear. So it says here, siege of Jerusalem, 63 BC. The siege of Jerusalem occurred during Pompey the Great's campaign in the east, shortly after his successful conclusion of the Third Mithridatic War. Pompey had been asked to intervene in a dispute over inheritance to the throne of the Hasmonean kingdom. See, so there was a back and forth between the two brothers, Hyrcanus, or John Hyrcanus II, and Aristobulus II. And if you notice, these are basically like Greek names because, yeah, even though we were the Hasmonean dynasty was a dynasty, eventually Jake, started adopting those Greek names, you know. So it says, which turned into a war between Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II. His conquest of Jerusalem, however, spelled the end of Jewish independence and the incorporation of Judea as a client kingdom of the Roman Republic. All right. And now I'm going to jump down to the aftermath as to what happened now after the siege. All right. So it says here, the siege and the conquest of Jerusalem. All right. This is not talking about the siege in 70 AD. All right. But this is talking about the siege that established Rome over us, right? So the siege and conquest of Jerusalem were a disaster for the Hasmonean kingdom. Pompey reinstated Hyrcanus II as the high priest, but stripped him of his royal title, though Rome recognized him as an ethnarch in 47 BC. All right, so he became the high priest, which is sort of like the highest level Israelite, could reach, because they didn't allow us to be kings. All right. It says Judea remained autonomous, but was obliged to pay tribute and became dependent on the Roman administration in Syria. All right. So by remaining autonomous, that's why we were able to keep the Passover, keep our own laws. You see, when you read in the book of Acts and they take Paul, to I believe it was Felix or Festus, and he basically says he's not learned in the ways of the laws of the Jews, So he basically has Agrippa, all right, Herod Agrippa, come over there, and he's more familiar with it, and that's when Paul basically tells him, oh, if you were, I wish you could be a Christian, so on and so forth, which he was just obviously just using wisdom at that point, all right, but yeah, we were allowed to keep our own laws, and be independent to an extent. But certain things we couldn't do of our own authority, like put people to death. All right. Just like that. That's why they would have to seek permission from a Roman procurator. All right. Or a prefect. All right. Or whoever. Okay. So it says here, Judea remained autonomous, but was obliged to pay tribute. All right. And became dependent on the Roman administration in Syria. All right. So he had to pay tribute. And actually, let's read that real quick. All right. Tribute going into, taxes. All right. That was put upon us. Okay. Now, actually, let me finish this and then I'll go to it. So it says the kingdom was dismembered and was forced to relinquish the coastal plain, depriving it of access to the Mediterranean, as well as parts of Idumea and Samaria. Several Hellenistic cities were granted autonomy to form the Decapolis, leaving the state greatly diminished. All right. So now when you go to like the book of Luke, for example, going into the birth of Yahushua, you'll notice it says here, Luke 2:1, and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus. All right. Caesar Augustus. And this is after Pompey and Julius Caesar are done. All right. And Augustus is the emperor. So it says that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed every one into his own city. All right. So basically, that decree was sent out that all should be taxed. And of course, we also had to pay it because we were tributary. We were subject onto Rome. So we also had to pay that. Okay. It says, verse 4, and Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea. Now, when you look, all right, at a map, all right, let's say New Testament is map, right? Go with map. The geography also matters as well, because let's see if I can get a good or decent enough picture. All right, so as you can see here, you have Galilee, which is up north, and you have Judea, which is down south. Now, notice when you read, it says here that Joseph went up from Galilee, all right, out of the city of Nazareth into Judea. Now, it doesn't mean that he went up north, all right, but what it means is that going to Judea or Jerusalem around this area, it was a mountainous region. Okay, so geographically, this would be at a higher, level than this area. So in order to come, that's why sometimes you'll see it'll say they went up to Jerusalem or up to, Judea or whatnot. All right, because they literally had to climb up. They had to go up. Or sometimes it'll say he went down to Damascus, but Damascus is really north. All right, it's talking physically, geographically, the landmass, the way it was set up. It was more. That's why it was also known as the hillside country, or the hill country, however it was called. All right. So continuing, it says, onto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and the lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. See, so now they had to go basically to, wherever it is that like it says, he went to the city of David because he was of the lineage of David. All right, so you could pay those taxes, all right, or those tributes, and it was these kinds of tributes and taxes that led to certain different revolts. As you read in Acts, I believe the 5th chapter, they refer to I believe his name was what's this guy's name? Yeah, it escapes me. Let me see if I can get it real quick. The days of taxing. Acts 5:37. All right, it says there we go. All right, so it says Acts 5:35. It says, and said unto them, ye men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what ye intend to do as touching these men. For before these days rose up Theodos. Now, at this time, all right, this is after Yahushua, all right, has already gone to the spirit world. Okay, so this is after Augustus Caesar, okay, and I believe this probably is during the reign of Tiberius or after the reign of Tiberius. All right. But as it says here, for before these days rose up Theodos, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined themselves, who was slain, and all as many as obeyed him were scattered and brought to naught. Now check this. It says, after this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing. All right. Now, why was there a taxing? Because what? There was a decree made, and being that we were subject or tributary unto Rome, we had to pay them. All right. We had to pay taxes, and they would have what? Publicans or tax collectors. Okay. Now, there's a reason why a lot of people didn't like the tax collectors or the publicans. Okay. When you look up a publican, all right, if you want to know what a publican is, publican, let's look up definition. All right, it's basically like a tax collector, right? It says collector of taxes, but I want them to give us a little bit more, because the reason why people hated or disliked the publicans was because what they would do is like to the chief publicans, for example, the Romans would sell the position, right? They would sell the position, and somebody would buy it. All right, they would basically buy it. It says so they would buy the position, all right, to become a chief tax collector, all right, and then they would be able to appoint, and you would have lower publicans under them. Now, what they would do is, with the authority or the backing of the Roman Empire, since they were collecting taxes in the name of the Roman Empire, if the Romans required 50 shekels, they could say 60 shekels, and then they would give Rome 50, and then they will keep 10. All right. So a lot of people really didn't like them for that, and so whenever they heard that, the publicans, they were usually, pretty like disliked. All right. Pretty disliked. Let's see what it says here. It says in antiquity. All right. Let's see. All right. This is it says in antiquity, publicans were public contractors in whose official capacity they often supplied the Roman legions and military, managed the collection of port duties, and oversaw public building projects. In addition, they served as tax collectors for the Roman Republic. And later, and that's why, like even today, a lot of people don't like the IRS. All right. But it says, and later the Roman Empire, farming the taxes of the Roman provinces and bidding on contracts from the Senate in Rome for the collection of various types of taxes. Importantly, this role as tax collectors was not emphasized until late into the history of the Republic. The publicans were usually the class of the equites. All right. Um, but yeah, we don't really have to read too much on it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So pretty much going back to the taxing. All right, it says here, so it says Acts 5 and 37. After this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed. You see, because eventually, or at the time, you had these people that would come up and they would say, "We're tired of this. We don't want to pay taxes. We don't want to be under these Romans." Now, Rome would set up, they would set up garrisons, or legions and troops stationed in certain castles, within the different provinces. So in the case, like today, you have police precincts, and police patrols. They had the same thing back then, centurions. All right. And, in case there was any ruckus or anything going on, they would intervene, and make sure everything is good. So when you read about when the Israelites or the Jews basically came after Paul, and they were pretty much they were about to kill him, and that Roman centurion stepped in and basically took Paul away from them, and then as they were scourging him, he basically said, "Well, is it lawful for you to do this to a Roman citizen?" All right. So at the time, there's a reason that those legions or the centurions were there. Okay. So this was all after Pompey had basically seized Jerusalem and now were subject onto them. Now, going to Herod and how these Herodians got power, okay, they were basically like an extension of the Roman Empire, although their army it wasn't necessarily the Roman army, it was their army. All right. So it says Antipater the Idumean. So it says Antipater the first, the Idumean, was the founder of the Herodian dynasty and the father of Herod the Great. This was the Herod that wanted to put Yahushua to death. All right, Herod the Great. It says, according to Josephus, he was the son of Antipas and had formerly held that name. It says, a native of Edom. All right, so we know that Antipater was an Idumean. He was an Edomite. And it says here that he was the father of Herod. So that makes Herod what? An Edomite. Okay. It says a native of Edom, southeast of Judah, between the Dead Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, which under the Romans came to be known as Idumea. Antipater became a powerful official under the later Hasmonean or the latter Hasmonean kings. All right. And subsequently became a client of the Roman general Pompey the Great when Pompey conquered Judah in the name of the Roman Republic. So that's how they were able to creep their way up in there, because he became, like it says, an official, all right, under the Hasmonean kings, namely John Hyrcanus II. Because remember, going back to the siege, Pompey basically had to choose or side with one of those two brothers that were going, Aristobulus or Hyrcanus. And it says he reinstated Hyrcanus. And Hyrcanus basically had Antipater speaking in his ears, So Antipater creeped up in there, gained traction and little credibility up in there with Hyrcanus, which is the high priest, all right? And through that, made his way to become the general of Pompey. And so now he basically starts getting, that his footholds, into Judea, into Judah. And he's setting up a position for his descendants, for his son, all right, and their sons. Okay. So it says, when Julius Caesar defeated Pompey, Antipater rescued Caesar in Alexandria, okay, and was made chief minister of Judea. It says, as because now remember, Judea is subject onto Rome. So the Romans are able to decide who they want to make what in what position where. So now, because of this sly demon coming up in there, befriending people, talking all nice, all right, sweet talking Hyrcanus, doing things for Caesar, all right. It says here, he was made chief minister of Judea, as Judah became known as to the Romans with the right to collect taxes. Antipater eventually made his sons Facilius, it says, and Herod the governors of Jerusalem and Galilee. Respectively, after the assassination of Caesar, Antipater was forced to side with Gaius Cassius Longinus against Mark Antony. The pro-Roman politics of Antipater led, you see, pro-Roman politics. All right. Once again, and they were both Edomites, the Romans at this time and Antipater. All right. But Antipater was looked as an Idumean, and Romans. Just like today, you may have a Russian and you may have a quote unquote British or an American. They're both Edomites, you know. So it says the pro-Roman politics of Antipater led to his increasing unpopularity among the devout non-Hellenized Jews. He died by poison. So you had Jake in there that were like, yo, we're not messing with this guy. All right. But he had already been able to set up his son Herod and his other son Phasaelus as governors in Jerusalem and Galilee. So it says the diplomacy and artful politics of Antipater, as well as his insinuation into the Hasmonean court. All right. How did he get himself into the Hasmonean court? Through talking and getting close to Hyrcanus II, which was a high priest. It says, paved the way for the rise of his son, Herod the Great, who used this position to marry the Hasmonean princess Miriamne. So you got to picture this, right? I believe Miriamne was Hyrcanus, John Hyrcanus II. All right, that was his daughter. All right, let's click on him. Let's go here to, oh man. All right, it doesn't really show it here. Okay, let's look her up. All right. Hasmonean. All right, I'm pretty sure I know she had, some form of relation or related to Hyrcanus II. Okay, all right. So let's see right here. It says Miriamne's only sibling was Aristobulus III. Her father, Alexander of Judea, the son of Aristobulus II, married his cousin Alexandra, daughter of his uncle Hyrcanus II. All right. So basically, they were related, and Hyrcanus basically had that that say, being that he was the high priest. Okay. So Antipater, he's now cool. He's tight with Hyrcanus. All right, and that sets up his son Herod to be able to now marry into the Hasmoneans. So if you're a governor and now you've married into the so-called family, the ruling dynastic family, all right, that's giving you more power. Now that's why Herod is now able to try and push himself off as a Jew, because he's marrying into the Hasmoneans, having children, and so on and so forth, trying to push themselves off as Jews, all right, as Jakes. All right, so it says, paved the way for the rise of his son, Herod the Great, who used this position to marry the Hasmonean princess, Miriamne, endear himself to Rome, and become king of Judea under Roman influence. So that's how Herod became king, all right, over us in Judea. Snuck up in there and had his whole basically his own army and so on and so forth. All right, but through those cunning, sly, sweet words, just like Haman. All right, same thing. Befriended Xerxes or Ahasuerus. Got up the ranks, try to gain clout, gain position, gain being liked. All right. But just in this case, Herod did it better. All right. And when you read in the book of Josephus, it gives you much more, information. Like he was real tight. He became real tight with what's this guy's name? Augustus Caesar. All right. Hence, he was, given these perks and these different authoritative positions. Okay. So, and then from there, being that he's already king, all right, his sons basically he divides the different parts of the province amongst his sons. All right, so you had like Herod Philip, Ali, what's his name? Damn, this guy's name escaped me. Oh, Herod Archelaus, amongst the different Herods. All right, which Herod Philip, I believe, was the one who, if I'm not mistaken, got rebuked by John, and then John ended up having his head, cut off. All right, but now let's go here to the book of Revelation, chapter 12. All right, we're gonna read, say the first 4 verses or so. It says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." Now, this woman that we're reading about, all right, represents the nation of Israel. Okay, man, what's this? Genesis, the 27, 29, or vice versa? Let's see. All right, let's see. Genesis 29. You know what? We're just gonna say sun and moon. Okay. There we go. Genesis 37 and 9. All right. All right, so this is the book of Genesis, chapter 37. All right, this is Genesis chapter 37, verse 5. It says, "And Joseph dreamed a dream." All right, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, "Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf." So it says, "And his brethren said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us?" And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Verse 39, "And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth?" All right. So as you can hear in there, the sun and the moon, all right, as Jacob rebuked Joseph, he refers to himself and the mother of Joseph, but then he refers to what? The stars, all right, the sun, the moon, the stars, all right, going to the rest of his Joseph's brothers, all right, which made up what? The nation of Israel. They were the patriarchs, all right, of the nation of Israel. All right, so this dream that Joseph had represent going into the sun and the moon and the stars that represented the nation of Israel. So when we go back to the book of Revelation where it talks about a woman, all right, well now let's go to let me close out a few of these tabs. All right, let's go to the book of let's see if it's Isaiah 6. All right, so it's Jeremiah 6 and 2. All right, so it says here, Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 2, it says, "I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman." All right, so metaphorically, you'll hear sometimes the nation of Israel is being, metaphorically spoken of as a woman. All right, so now we covered the stars and the moon, all right, and the sun, and then we covered the woman. All right. So in Revelation 12 and 1, that woman, all right, which was clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her crown the 12 stars, that represented the nation of Israel. See, the woman Israel. It says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. All right. And that she being with child, that was representing, all right, on a larger scale, the nation of Israel. All right, because that child was Yahushai, and he was to come from the nation of Israel. Okay. But even on a lower level, of course, we know that's talking about his mother, Mary. Okay. Now it says travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. All right. Why is that? Because at this time, once again, we know at the birth of Yahushai, all right, which should have been during the reign of Augustus Caesar. Remember, we read in the book of Luke that he sent out the taxation, and Joseph and Mary had to go and basically get taxed, and she was rich, she was great with child, and that was Yahushai. All right, so it says, heaven suffereth. All right, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 12. It says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. So now, who are the violent? The violent that is talking about here was the Romans. They are the ones who came and took, all right, and basically took us over by force. All right, and we were suffering violence because we were subject under them. And that kingdom of heaven is representing the nation of Israel, more specifically in this case, the southern kingdom. All right. So that's why they were pained to be delivered. Okay. Verse 3 says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now, that great red dragon represented the ancient pagan Roman Empire. Okay. The Roman Empire. Now it says it had 7 heads, which represented the 7, you could say, nations that the Rome conquered, to form that empire. Because of course Rome was a part of that, started off as Rome, but then they took over the Greeks, the Greeks, then Rome, then the Spanish or Hispania, all right, then the Gauls, all right, or the French, okay, and then Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britannia. Okay, so these were the 7 heads that it says this great red dragon had, and the 10 horns were basically just, you could say, sub nations within those 7 heads, right? So for example, today you might say Europe, right? You might say Italy, you might say Spain, you might say, Germany, but there's different, specific nations within these big ass land masses, right? So you have like Luxembourg, Netherlands, Belgium, so on and so forth, right? Sicily, all this, that, and the third. All right. Now, if my memory serves me right, the 10 horns, all right, you had the Vandals, all right, the Anglo-Saxons, all right, the Lombards, all right, Heruli, okay, you had the Alemanni, okay, you had the Visigoths, all right, you had the Suebi, all right, you had the Ostrogoths, the Burgundians, and the Franks, all right, and those were the 10 horns, all right, that were upon the red dragon, which was the Roman Empire. It says, and 7 crowns upon his heads, all right, which were synonymous with the 7 heads, all right. So this was the Roman Empire, the ancient pagan Roman Empire. It says, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth, right? So we're still referring to this Roman Empire, but the stars of heaven, remember, we read in verse 1, was representing the nation of Israel. All right. So the 3rd part of the stars of heaven at this time represented Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right. The southern kingdom, and which they were collectively referred to as the Jews. Okay. So it says here, it drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And that's how we became subject, all right, onto the Romans. Because remember, the dragon is the Roman Empire. And as we just went through the history, what happened? Pompey came over there, all right, besieged us and subjected us, all right, onto them, all right, onto Rome. It says, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Okay. Now we know when I believe it's Matthew the second chapter. When you go into it, all right, it goes into how Herod, inquired diligently from the wise men to try and put Yahushua to death, upon knowing, certain information that he wanted. And Herod was basically an extension of that dragon, an extension of that Roman Empire. Though he had his own army, he was still put up and set up by them. All right, so he was still technically a part of that dragon or that Roman Empire. All right, so yeah, I'm pretty much gonna stop it here. All right, just wanted to get that point. All right, dealing with the history or the context, that we had just covered. Okay, over there, dealing with Jerusalem, so on and so forth. All right. So let me stop the screen share. All right. So pretty much that was it. All right. I know it was it was a lot of information. All right. But Lord willing, that was edifying unto the elect. All right. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakakudash. All right. As the elders always say, man, in order to know the mystery, all right, or in order to understand the mystery, you got to know the history. All right. So with that, Shalom.